Hello, I'm Mark Baer. You're watching the Your Town television program. I'm with MagdyIbraham, a serial entrepreneur. Welcome.
Thank you.
So we met 9 years ago at an entrepreneurial forum held by the county.
Yes.
And that was the genesis of your idea had started all the way back then. I can't believe 9 years has passed since I've known you. And over those years, then because of your involvement with the Middlebury Institute of International Studies, I got involved with that as well with you.
Yes.
Let's talk about Middlebury first of all, and you went to school there as
Right. I got my BA in political science from there. And so that's how I was involved. I stayed involved over the years, especially because I live here. And so once in a while they would ask me to participate in projects. And at one point I headed the committee that I asked you to serve on, which was tasked with promoting the Institute in the local area here. So that's how I got to do that.
Yeah, so this was a great honor for me, and Middlebury is an amazing place, doing amazing stuff.
It is.
But you've been an entrepreneur. You started in the restaurant business.
Yes.
Let's talk about a little bit about that, and then we'll get into what you're doing now.
Well, when I was finished with school with Ms., it was clear to me that I wanted to operate my own business. And the reason why I wanted to do that was to get my hands into every aspect of a small business operation, to see what that was like. And in fact, that worked out precisely according to plan, except that in the first few years, it was very difficult because it was a lot more complex than I had expected.
Let's talk about the restaurant a little bit.
Yes. I thought that because it was a small restaurant that it would be a simple business to operate. That was not true.
And this is in Carmel, so let's describe the restaurant a little bit.
Oh, yes. It was an established restaurant when I bought it, Patisserie Boissiere, in downtown Carmel. Very well known, in fact, thought of as a Carmel institution at the time. And so that was encouraging to me that I'm not starting something from scratch. And in fact, that was very helpful. It came with a solid foundation of repeat customers. But on the operational side, because I had not operated my own business before, it was a lot more effort than I had expected. You have 20 employees, thousands of customers you're dealing with monthly, hundreds of items to order, rules, laws, regulations. It was overwhelming, and for the first few years. And so I've always been inquisitive, analytical, and organized. So at some point I realized I needed to stop and start taking one area at a time.
And rethink all of this.
Correct. And redo it and get so that I can get on top of it.
So, and again, you're having the same problems that any restaurateur would be having.
Oh, sure.
So let's talk about, so then you built a online software application. This is what led to where we are today.
Yes.
And so let's talk about what the application is and for what problem.
It is an online software application that helps me shop for the hundreds of items that I buy regularly at the restaurant or bought regularly at the restaurant before I sold it, so that I'm shopping for the items and in the process getting the best prices the best price for each item, as opposed to blindly ordering everything, which is what the vast majority of operators have done and continue to do to this day. by not shopping for all these items that I buy regularly, I'm wasting a ton of money, a huge amount of money. In fact, once I instituted the shopping procedure, the savings amounted to almost 5% of revenues. That is, 5% of revenues moved from cost of goods to the bottom line. And in any business, I would think 5% of revenues added to the bottom line is a huge amount of money. In a small business, in the restaurant business, where, as I'm sure you're aware, there's a very high turnover and a high failure rate, 5% of revenues, again, is a very significant amount of money.
When you went about the software, again, what's the problem and what's the cost? Let's drill down on this.
Yeah. Well, the problem is that there is not, or there was not until I designed and built that software, there was not a time-efficient tool to help someone in my position shop for the hundreds of items I bought regularly. And by that I mean, let's think of the average Monday when I'm placing an order and I'm ordering 100 items. Ideally, I want to get prices on most of these items from several vendors so that I am paying the best price for each of those items before I place an order. That's not something you can do with pen and paper. I mean, if you think about it, 100 items times 7 or 8 vendors, getting all these prices, and then you go down the list and maybe highlight the best price for each, and then call back and give each vendor those items you highlight. It's just not practical. It's not doable. Maybe if it will take you a day or two, full day or two, to go through this and do it properly. So obviously I wanted to compress this whole process.
Were you surprised about the efficiency that you were able to create?
I was surprised about the extra savings I realized from once I started using the software, because up until then I was doing a version of that using off-the-shelf software programs, 2 or 3 of them, and moving from one to the other to the third to accomplish the ultimate goal of shopping and saving the money. And it worked, and it saved me 3% of revenues, which was a huge amount of money. Now, when I first started doing that many years earlier, yes, I was very surprised, because as I said earlier, that's a significant amount of savings. When I started putting together the software and getting it built, my expectation was that maybe I'll realize another 0.25% additional savings. I was very surprised that it was almost 2% additional savings. And that is because the process of getting prices and was so simplified and moved a lot more speedily, that I realized that instead of getting prices for only, say, 20% of the items I buy that are responsible for 80% of my spending, I could just get prices for everything, because it's just a few more minutes to ask each vendor, and by doing so, I was surprised by the extra 1 to 1.5% savings,
which adds up to real money.
Which brings it to almost 5%.
Wow! So let's talk about what you've developed and why it's better than what else is out there.
Having gone through the process I described earlier, whereby it was tedious and using 2 or 3 different software programs, and some of it is manual, I continued to do it because of the savings, because I could not just let 3% of revenues be forgone. So when the cost of building a software came down enough that I could afford to do it on my own without investors, my top priority was not to save extra money. I was already doing that. My top priority was to simplify the process greatly so that I can cut out the tediousness that I was experiencing every week. And so because that was my ultimate goal, when I designed it, every step was there specifically to make it as intuitive, as simple, and as easy flowing as possible, so that it is both time efficient, but also nice to use.
I think to develop this, you really have to know your problem.
Oh, yes.
I mean, you
Sure.
know, and the fact that you're living it, you know your problem in a very intimate way.
Yes.
I think that has to be something that's a differentiator. And then let's talk about what it took to get to where it is now.
You're absolutely right. I had to know the problem. I had to know that I have that problem in my business. And of course, at the same time, I was actively looking for a solution to that problem. So it was the combination of these three things that prompted me to first put together a solution, and then when it became feasible for me to actually build a software, then I did so. As far as the effect of the software on my operation, obviously it had a huge effect financially, as I explained earlier. But in addition to that, it brought joy to running my restaurant, because I went from having a huge intractable problem in the marketplace that the vast majority of people don't do anything about, to essentially fixing it and turning the tables on my interlocutor on the other side, who are the vendors, because up to that point, vendors had know everything about my buying habits, what it is I'm buying, how much of it, and whatever prices they gave me were accepted, because I don't have a choice. When the software was implemented, I essentially ended up turning the tables, and now I had full visibility into the marketplace. I know what 7, 8, 9 vendors are charging for each item, and each one of them only knows what they are charging. And so that was very satisfying, obviously. I would use the analogy of every Monday when I was doing my big order, of sitting at the card table, or before sitting at the card table, I know that I'm going to sweep all the chips off the table, regardless of who else is there or who else is going to be there. That's really how it felt.
I assume other restaurateurs all have the same issues you do.
Yes.
And how will this software will easily customize for their needs?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
So I guess the question is, so what's in it for them?
First of all, it's easy to use, intuitive, because I made sure it was for myself. And in version 2.0, well, right now I get the prices and I post them in manually. In version 2.0, a restaurant operator will have that option, or being able to import prices from vendors online automatically, so they don't have to call to get prices and cut that piece out, and that would save them even more time. But in the end, they'll still obviously get the same results. They are shopping. They always know they're getting the best price for every item, as opposed to now, whereby in essence they are dealing with monopolies. It's as if they're dealing with monopolies, not buying and selling in a free market. because if you're only buying from one or two vendors, you don't know what the real price of an item is. That is what I would call a monopoly, almost.
So you've had quite a journey to get to simplicity, to refine this, to do this, and it's been you've been on a journey.
Sure.
This is several years to do this, to make it work, and you finally, I know you wouldn't be putting it out unless you felt like you had something really solid at this point.
Oh, I do, because I used it the last 4 years I was in business before I sold the restaurant, and the data is all still there, graphs, numbers, every single price that a vendor quoted is still there for anybody to see. So the results were significant as far as the bottom line of my operation was concerned, and the data and all kinds of data points actually are still there for whoever is interested to look at.
Well, I think the data points are essential,
of course,
for anybody to look at, because you can say you can do something,
right,
but if you don't have the backup, it's not the same as saying you've got the data. And I think again that's a big differentiator of what you do.
Absolutely, yes, and 4 years worth of data.
That's impressive.
Thank you.
Any last thoughts on this?
It would be very satisfying to share the process I went through with others, because I know it would save them a ton of time. Save them a ton of money, and it will make them feel a lot better about operating their business. Because when you're in control of a certain part of the operation, actually to 100% control, which is not achievable if you think about it in any other aspect of running a business. That's very satisfying. I remember distinctly, once the kinks were worked out of the software, it took about a year or so, and modified it enough and improved it enough that it became easy to use. From that point on, I remember the feeling every time I used it, especially for the big order, the big weekly order, that it was empowering, addictive, and bordered on pleasurable.
And what do you call it?
Mallet software. The name was born of the insight that came to me many years ago while I was running the business and talking to fellow operators, that the business methodology that they were using, and I was using the first few years, was essentially whack-a-mole business strategy. And so later, when I started actually building the software, the name Mallet came to me because of that, and I decided to name it Mallet Software.
I'm Mark Baer. You're watching Your Town Television. MagdyIbraham, entrepreneur.
Thank you.